Hello and welcome to episode 398 of the official EstablishTheRun.com podcast. My name is Adam Levitan, as always, joined by Evan Silva. Today, we have a very, very special guest. You know him as the king of the New Orleans Saints beat. We know him as arguably ETR's number one beat writer. It is, of course, Nick Underhill of NewOrleansFootball.com. Nick, thanks for doing the show. How's it going?
Doing well. Just happy to be here with arguably the two best fantasy football writers. Arguably.
You know, I say arguably because I think we had a question about Michael Thomas' health, and Evan pinged you, and Nick was like gallivanting around Rome or something like that, and couldn't get us an immediate response. I mean, we need an immediate response from ETR's number one beat writer.
There was an escalation in the text. I wake up, 7 hours ahead. There's an escalation. There's like by then it was like, F you, I'm never asking you anything again. So
because he got back to me at like 3 a.m. My time.
Well, you got at me 3 a.m. my time.
Oh boy. Evan, good afternoon. How's it going?
It's going pretty good. I made some changes in the top 150 last night. I'm going to start this change log here momentarily. But we have 7 days until veterans report.
Mm-hmm.
Some rookies are showing up, and I mean, shit's about to get real.
Yeah, I love the change log because, it's one thing to just make changes in the rankings, and we'll talk about them on the podcast and stuff like that. But being able to see Evan's thought process behind changes in the top 150 is super valuable. So we'll get that going soon. We wanted to have Nick on today because I think, and we think, the Saints stuff is really worth zooming in on. I mean, there are a ton of questions around this team with key players coming off injury, with talented players facing suspension, with usage questions, with the coaching change. I mean, there's so much going on with the Saints. We're going to get into all that with Nick today. Before we get into it, I want to remind everyone this show is brought to you by our friends at Underdog Fantasy, undoubtedly the smoothest, highest stakes, best UX for anyone trying to play best ball. Use promo code ETR when you sign up for a $100 matching deposit bonus. And of course, you can upload our rankings directly onto Underdog if you desire. Also, if you buy Draft Kit Pro, which is $49.99, you do get $10 automatically in your Underdog account, whether you have an account or not. All right. I want to start here, Nick, and we'll get to the Alvin Kamara thing in a second, but from a macro perspective, I want to start here with the coaching stuff. I mean, Sean Payton, after 15 years, is no longer the head coach of the New Orleans Saints. Defensive-minded Dennis Allen takes over, which for fantasy purposes, I don't think affects us too much. Maybe you disagree. But Pete Carmichael will be the offensive coordinator. Pete Carmichael has been Sean Payton's right-hand man for, I guess the whole time. The whole time Sean Payton was there. What kind of transition in terms of scheme or anything else, any other changes you think will be different with Payton gone and Carmichael in?
I don't think it's going to be that drastic. And honestly, when you say defensive-minded coach, I don't think it can dial back anymore. Jameis averaged 23 throws a game last year during his starts. That number, everything they've done to me suggests that number is going to go up this year. It seems like they're going to be more wide receiver based. You don't add Jarvis Landry, Chris Olave, get Mike Thomas back from injury, and keep it kind of as tight as it was before. One of the changes I think we're going to see, and I've been hearing a lot of talk about this, is that they're probably going to do more based off of play action. That was something that other members of the coaching staff thought they should have did more of last year, and it just kind of stayed a little bit tight. And if you look at Jameis's numbers over the years, that's something that he's really done well in on those types of plays. And the other thing that I think is going to be a little bit different is if you look at their one season with Pete Carmichael calling plays, 2012, Sean Payton suspended. That was the first season in Saints history that they used 11 personnel on more than 50% of their snaps. Now, as it went on a little bit, when they had Willie Snead, Brandon Cooks, and Mike Thomas together for a year, they exceeded that number. But I think that was the only other time they were above that mark. So I think it's part of Pete Carmichael's DNA to kind of be more wide receiver heavy as opposed to 2 back looks, 2 tight end looks, maybe a little bit less fullback. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see a little bit more of an open offense. And I think that suits the personnel. I think it suits Jameis Winston. And like I said, I just think we're going to see more than 23 pass attempts per game. So I think going forward, some of their offensive players are a little bit safer than they were a year ago. And again, like when you get Kenny Stills out of there and you get Mike Thomas or Jarvis Landry or Chris Olave, and it makes a little bit more sense to maybe up your pass attempts when you actually have adequate NFL wide receivers populating your roster.
Yeah, you mentioned that it could be a more wide receiver centric offense. I mean, if you look at like the whole depth chart has like shifted down one. I mean, Marquez Callaway, Deontay Hardy, Traquan Smith, these guys are the second in line receivers now. They were the starters last year. And now you have Michael Thomas back. It sounds like you're optimistic about his health and recovery. Chris Olave, I mean, he's going to be the primary perimeter receiver, I would expect. And then Jarvis Landry, who they signed. I mean, Jarvis Landry and Michael Thomas primarily run like inside stuff and in breaking routes. And Chris Olave, I would expect to be the perimeter receiver. Is that kind of how you envision things?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think that's probably the big thing that has to change this year is that in breaking stuff and getting those targets over the middle area of the field. It was something that Jameis really didn't do last year, and those are, kind of some of the plays that he's gotten in trouble on over the years. Maybe not seeing linebackers over the middle of the field, and well, he was rehabbing the ACL injury. One of the things he talked about is just his inability to kind of throw the ball down the field. So as he was going through his stuff, he was kind of forced to focus on getting better at throwing some of that shorter area stuff, having a little bit of accuracy there. We'll see if that actually translates into anything. But I will say, like out at minicamp, Jarvis Landry being out there, like very quickly, like slants and crossing routes, like they're connected on him. And these are plays that they weren't making a year ago. So I think having Landry and Mike kind of opens some of that stuff up a little bit. It's going to have to. And yeah, I think Olave is going to be more of the outside guy. And I think we've seen 6 practices, so I don't want to draw any conclusions, but I kind of feel like the scouting reports on him were fairly accurate. Some of the stuff that, people said were downs about him, I think we saw the positives were very clear. The route running's unbelievable. The way he just kind of moves athletically is a little bit different than some other guys. So I think that's a plus trait. But some of those contested passes, and this isn't even with pads on, but some of these plays that got a little bit physical, it's kind of like, man, you need to fight a little bit harder for some of these passes. So we'll see how that progresses throughout the summer. But I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up being maybe their leading yardage guy, just because I think his game suits Jameis's strengths so well. And I think he's going to be able to get down the field. You're going to see some of those deep plays. And I wouldn't be surprised if he has a really good season.
I wanted to throw one more thing about the coaching change at you guys and see if you agree. I thought Sean Payton was awesome at adapting his game plans to both his skill set, his team skills, and the opponent's skills. And that's not something that like you can carry over from coach to coach. I feel like that's something Sean Payton just like did really well. So I find myself thinking there's a little bit more fragility in the floor losing Sean Payton and putting in Pete Carmichael, because I don't know that he's as capable as Sean Payton was at designing game plans to be effective for both his team and the defensive and who they're playing on defense. Are you following what I'm saying, Nick? Like Sean Payton was so good at that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's some level of variance here that I don't know that we're going to be able to know about until we actually get into the thick of it. But I mean, there has to be a difference between Sean being there and not being there in a neutral season. Like he had to be the difference between a couple wins a season, just based on his play calling and, his willingness to be aggressive in situations where maybe other guys aren't. And going to those red zone plays early where a lot of other coaches are kind of like, well, I want to save this for the right situation. Like just some of Sean's gut feel. And then, like you said, his ability to kind of, so like, I remember a few years ago, I think it was 2017 or 2018, whenever they played 2018, when they played Philadelphia in the playoffs, and Peter King had some type of access and he was in there as they were going through the game plan. And then he wrote a story afterwards, just kind of about like how Sean noticed that somebody was like a little bit ginger on one of their ankles and they just ruthlessly attacked it. And that ended up being, a difference in one of those games. Like just kind of picking out some of that stuff too. Like are the other guys going to see it as well as clearly be able to execute it the same way? I know Pete Carmichael is credited with a lot of different things that they came up with over the years. 2014, 2015, like there was this tackle overplay that he stole from somebody, put it in against the Bills, and they ended up scoring on it twice. Like some of these little wrinkles that they came up with, a lot of that stuff was Carmichael as well. And it's just kind of tough to know exactly who he is and what his contributions are, because since 2009, like he's just cool sitting in the background, and he's a lot different than a lot of people personality wise in the NFL. He's just kind of very regular, whereas, other people have desires to move up, and that leads to being attention seeking. And, talking about the things you do, whereas Pete doesn't say anything. Like, I don't think anybody knows anything about him except for what other people say about him. And, that makes it hard to know exactly what his contributions were, but it's unique that somebody that could be this close to a head coach for so long, that had such an influence on the league and is so well regarded, really never had an opportunity. And it's because he just didn't want him. So we're going to find out. I mean, even this year, like, there was a period of like, will Pete take the job or won't he? And he had to kind of go through his process and decide if he wanted to be the sole offensive guy for this team. And ultimately he decided he wanted to, but yeah, it's tough to know like what the floor is without Sean. It's definitely a little bit lower than it used to be. I just don't know how far down it falls.
Yeah.
Where will Sean Payton be coaching in 2023, and why will it be the Dallas Cowboys? Go ahead.
I mean, look, honestly, if you were placing a bet on it, I think that's the one. It just kind of seems like it's been leading there forever, and it's just kind of been going on for so long. The Miami stuff, I don't know. Like, it's weird to me that one keeps coming up. Like, didn't they just hire a coach? I don't get why that location keeps coming up. I don't understand why every story seems to leak from Miami. Like, that kind of suggests that these are like Dolphins based. I don't know. Like, being a reporter, you just kind of look at where stories come from and like wonder who's talking. It's just very weird how that one's out there. But yeah, I think if I were betting on a futures type deal, Dallas, and I don't think anything's gonna happen in the Chargers, but like if that one were to open up, that would be the spot I would want to go if I were Sean Payton.
Oh yeah, for sure. Okay.
Oh yeah.
We're bearing the lead here. The lead is, of course, Alvin Kamara and Michael Thomas. Let's start with the Alvin Kamara situation. Evan, why don't you go ahead? Because I know you made a move in your top 150, but maybe Nick can comment more on that. But Evan, why don't you start with where you're at on Kamara right now?
Yeah, previously was extremely cautious about Alvin Kamara. I mean, if you go back and read the details of the alleged off-field allegation, it didn't sound good. But I think that it doesn't seem to be moving in the direction that Alvin Kamara is going to be suspended before the season. And I doubt anything's going to happen during the season at this point. So I had Alvin Kamara somewhere in the 30s, mid to late 30s. You weren't going to get him if you were using the top 150. Although I did just draft him in the Scott Fish Bowl in the 5th round. I was very surprised that he was still there in the 5th round. I moved him all the way up to number 18 overall last night. It's just, I don't know. I want to hear your take on this though, for sure, Nick.
So I have questions. Let's just assume he plays all season. I have no idea how this one's going to turn out either. Like, I was telling Adam before the show, like, some people think it's going to happen, other people don't. It's kind of like stalled in the court process. I think there's a lot of wonderment, like if a video were to ever come out of this. Like, a video certainly exists somewhere, but like, it hasn't come out yet, so it doesn't seem like it's going to leak. But if it does, and then people kind of see, like, does that change the perception of it, and does the league have to act quicker? So there's just too many contingencies here to kind of go through it. But yeah, if he were to play all 17, I don't know that we're ever going to see him catch 80 passes again, at least with this quarterback. I would bet no. It took him until week 6 last year to really get on the same page. And then they connected 10 times against Seattle, but it was like an effort to get there. And I don't think it's natural for Jameis Winston to kind of get to his check down. He's got a big arm. He's going to look down the field. He's going to wait for things to develop. Whereas like Breeze, it was like a quick look to the left, over the middle, nothing there. Okay, off to Alvin, 81 passes every year, lock it in. It's going to be that. And I don't think you're going to get that production out of him in the passing game. I mean, I think they'll find ways to get him the ball, but I would bet the heavy under on 80 if that was the line. So yeah, I don't know that you put him all the way up. And losing Teron Armstead, I think that's going to be a factor in how they run. Runs to the left side of the field last year were like 1.5 yards lower than they had been previously. And that was without Andrews Pete, who was a huge part of their running game, their run blocking scheme. And Armstead was injured for a number of games too. So there's just a lot of things that I could see where nothing about his game changes, but the circumstances around him change to impact his ability to put up the same statistics.
Yeah, that's where you can really poke holes in. Let's just say there's no suspension. I think that we're looking at 55 to 65 receptions.
That's fair.
A little bit lower efficiency in the running game. It has been interesting to me that they really have not done anything to add to their backfield. I mean, they've got Mark Ingram and like Tony Jones behind Alvin Kamara. Does that I mean, does that suggest confidence that he's going to not face any kind of discipline from the league? I mean, it's surprising to me that they did work out David Johnson at one point, right? But I mean, they have not been aggressive in addressing their backfield situation behind Alvin Kamara. And I mean, I don't know what Mark Ingram has left. I mean, he's 32 years old now.
They did have interest in signing Sony Michel, and then he failed a physical here. So I think that they've been kind of looking at it a little bit, and then he went and signed somewhere else like immediately after that. So must not have been too big of a deal, but for them, they were a little bit uncomfortable with it. Abram Smith, an undrafted rookie out of Baylor, he had some pretty good numbers in college. That's someone they like quite a bit. We'll kind of see, what he does. Mini camp, OTAs. There wasn't really anything significant, but I mean, those are passing camps, and I think he's kind of more of a, he's going to make his living running the ball. So yeah, there's that. And then Darius Victor is supposed to be working out. He was the USFL offensive MVP. He spent some time with the Saints in 2017 in camp. But yeah, there hasn't been a significant move. I could still see them maybe picking someone up at some point if their information changes. But right now, yeah, I would agree that nothing about their actions signifies that they're panicking, worried, that they feel like something's imminent. Last I heard about the Alvin case, he was supposed to be back on August 1st, I think. And like the expectation is that like there's just like another continuance. So as long as this goes on and the longer it plays out, the better it is for his odds of getting those 17 games, 60, the whole season without that suspension. But I do think a lot rides on that video. Like as long as the video doesn't leak, and the fact that it hasn't yet, I think is significant. But I don't think this case is just going to go away either. Like the Vegas police like put out like graphics on Twitter like after they arrested him, which was kind of crazy. Like it kind of seems like they don't want to let this go easily. I think that there's probably a level of like they're sick of people getting in trouble in Vegas, and this is a way to make an example of it. So I don't think it's going to disappear. It's just a matter of the timing. And I don't know if there's a possibility of settling it, but even if he does, I mean the police still got to let it go. And it seems to be the feeling that might not happen, or it might be a long shot, but you never know. The longer it goes on, sometimes these things kind of soften up a little bit and kind of can settle. Right. So we'll see.
I have a few questions on this. First, how has the video not leaked? I mean, my God, this is a video from surveillance camera in a Las Vegas hotel. If you go ask for this, I assume they tell you to F off, right? No problem. But how has this not leaked somehow? I'm sure many people would pay money for this, et cetera, et cetera. How is the video not leaked, Nick? Because I agree with you that as soon as the video leaks, the NFL is going to have to do something. I think in the NFL's perfect world, they let the criminal trial play out, because that was a lot of what the new collective bargaining agreement was about, was like, hey, we need the criminal trials to play this out, not have Goodell be the judge, jury, and executioner on all these cases. So how is the video not out? And yeah, I have more questions after that.
Yeah, I don't know. I think, the other crazy part of this is like they let him play in the Pro Bowl. Like they knew this was coming, and they were like, yeah, go play in the Pro Bowl and then arrest him afterwards. Like there's just a lot of weird things about it. So yeah, I have no idea. I'm shocked it hasn't come out. I've kind of, as a reporter, like that's one of those things that's like in your head all the time. And I'm like waiting like every day. It's like, okay, is it going to happen? And it just doesn't. So, I guess credit to the Vegas police that they aren't leaking it, selling it to TMZ, whatever it is. Like,
or the hotel. The hotel could leak it. Yeah. I mean, imagine if you had that on New Orleans football, football.com, or I'm sorry, New Orleans.football. I mean, you would start crying. I mean, you would break the site with how many people would come to watch the video if you could get your hands on it.
I just want the analysis, man. I don't want the videos. I just want to analyze the game. That's all I'm interested in.
Okay. Yeah. So my take on it right now, I get that there's a lot of different pieces. If you have good lawyers, they can push this case and push this case and push this case and maybe push it out till after the season. And then Alvin and his team can deal with it then. So yeah, we're trying to evaluate the range of outcomes in the rankings. I think when people are drafting, they need to understand that there's still a wider range of outcomes currently. Like Evan said, we're weighting it more towards him actually being able to play most of the season. My second question is on the backup thing. Can Mark Ingram handle a full workload? Let's say Alvin gets hurt. Let's say Alvin gets suspended. Do you think the Saints still think? Because in the past, when Alvin hasn't been out there, it's been like the Mark Ingram show. He's been one of the best plays in fantasy. At this point in his career, can Mark Ingram still handle a full workload?
I thought he looked pretty pretty good last year. I think if this were to happen earlier in the season, I like his odds of kind of holding it down and being productive more so than later in the season. So maybe that would actually possibly be a better thing for the Saints if this happened sooner than later, just because I think that they're better equipped to handle it earlier in the season. But yeah, I think he'd do okay. I thought he actually looked good last year. I didn't think he looked like super washed up. Like, he's not the same player he was, but I think there's still some decent mileage there for him, and I think he can still be effective. But yeah, I think he'd carry the load mostly, presuming something else doesn't happen at this point. I don't think that they're super high on Tony Jones Jr. I think that his spot on the team is maybe a little bit tenuous right now, and he's going to need to prove it against some of these other guys. I do know that they like Abram Smith, but that's kind of a major projection at this point. So yeah, I think it would mostly be the Mark Ingram show early on, and I think Taysom would probably get some of those carries too.
Oh, we're going to get to Taysom in a second. There's been much controversy in the ETR Slack about Taysom. We'll get to that in a second here. By the way, tell Pete Carmichael that Darius Victor, from a USFL expert, shout out to me, Darius Victor is not the running back that they want from the USFL. They want either Reggie Corbin or Mark Thompson. You can tell Pete that. Okay.
You're a sick man.
Okay, let's go to Michael Thomas. This has been going on since September of 2020. We're coming up on 2 years of issues, controversy, tweets, all kinds of things going around with Michael Thomas's ankle. He came back for 6 games in 2020 plus the playoffs. I thought was, not himself. Then sits out all of last year. He's 29 years old now. I have concerns about Michael Thomas. I have concerns about him not playing with Drew Brees, just like I have concerns about Alvin Kamara not playing with Drew Brees. So where are you at on Michael Thomas right now, Nick? What do you think about his health and how he'll perform this year?
Well, let's start at the end of that. Pre-injury, he was pretty quarterback proof. His numbers with Teddy Bridgewater, with Taysom Hill, they stayed pretty good. The yards per reception, I would guess, probably went up a little bit with Taysom. There's a little bit more downfield aggressiveness, and he was playing injured. He was on that injured ankle when he was playing with Taysom and was still effective. So I'm not necessarily too worried about that. I think he can alter his game a little bit. 2016, the way he played was a little bit different too. And that was kind of the last year. If you go through like Breeze's routes, like, okay, the out route beyond this distance and the effectiveness on those all changed. And then their offense became super condensed in 17, but he was making some more plays down the field outside the numbers a little bit. So I think that he can tailor his game a little bit to do some different things. Obviously, you still want the slants, the crossing routes, and all that stuff as part of the offense. But I think there's a little bit more there that he can do. So if he's healthy, I expect him to still be good. Again, it's not going back to the Alvin statement. Like, I don't think that we see Mike at the same numbers that he was before. I think his skill set was just uniquely perfect to where Breeze was, and it was just a perfect marriage. But I still think that, if he's 90% or better, I would guess 1,100, 1,200 yards. I think he's still that type of player. I just don't think it's best of all time type numbers anymore. As far as his health, some of the stuff that we're seeing in these videos, I think you do see like a steady progression. I think the important thing about the videos more so than what you're seeing is that he's putting them out, which means that he's feeling good about where he's at, where he's going with his rehab, that there's a confidence in his ability to do different things. And, I'm not going to put like a date on it or like report anything here, but everything that I'm hearing, if he isn't ready to practice like somewhere early in that training camp window, I think it would be a surprise to a lot of people attached to the team.
Okay. Yeah. And target competition has increased too. They used to be pretty thin, and now Olave and Jarvis Landry are there as well. Evan, you want to ask Nick anything about Michael Thomas, and where are you at with Michael Thomas right now in terms of your rankings, Evan?
Yeah, he's kind of in a state of limbo. I don't know, the 11 to 1,200 yard, prediction is pretty aggressive, Nick. But I know
you think so? If he's healthy?
Yeah. I think that beat writers aren't always the best statistical prognosticators.
Sure.
But no, I'm teasing you. You're awesome at what you do. But I was just going to say the thing about the target competition, because back in the day, in his heyday, 2019, his target share within the offense was just immense. Even if you go back to, and I know that he's seen quarterback proof with Teddy Bridgewater, but Teddy Bridgewater was just, he was getting like, half the targets each game almost. It was him and Kamara, and then like not a whole lot else, right?
Yep.
So now that they have, they used to, I mean, they gave up a ton to go get Chris Olave. Jarvis Landry has been a target hog really throughout his career. So I don't know. I mean, I'm Nick
Throw a
just
number on it.
Nick just painted the positive picture, and I just painted the negative picture, and that to me kind of explains why he's in a state of limbo. One day I'm like, should I move him up? Should I leave him pretty low? I mean.
Well, I think we need to see it. I mean, I'm kind of speaking through it like if he's 90% or better. Like I still have a lot of confidence in his ability to still get open, make plays, and do that. Because like he was playing hurt the last time we saw him, and he was still putting up decent numbers with a guy that's now a tight end. So I mean, I think that if you get a quarterback, that's okay. But yeah, I mean, I think the floor on this is scary too, because we don't know that it's been 2 years. We have no idea what he's going to look like. That ankle's been messed up, and his game isn't like based on speed or anything. Like he gets separation through like the violence of his change in direction, and he's got to show that. So I think there is a lot of if here, but I do think that people kind of forget how good he was when he played, and there isn't a guarantee that's completely gone either. So I think we just need to see him at this point. But I would be interested to know if you think 1,200 is too high. Like what's the number? If 1,100 is too high, like are you at like 800? Like what are you thinking?
I think you do well to get to 1,000.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, is he going to riff with Jameis too? I mean, we haven't seen them together.
Yeah.
But you mentioned that tight end that used to play quarterback, Taysom Hill. I want to hear your thoughts on him because I have taken an optimistic stance on him in fantasy because at the tight end, like the tight end position sucks in fantasy. You've got like 4 or 5 really good guys, a bunch of guys you hope might be okay, and then you're digging into like Taysom Hill.
Yeah.
And Taysom Hill, you can build a case. So from that standpoint, I'm like, all right, let's build an optimistic case for Taysom Hill. Michael Thomas comes back. He's not the same. Alvin Kamara maybe gets suspended. They need a means of generating offense. Adam Troutman has not really stepped forward as a pass catcher. Could they end up relying on Taysom? Could he get like some goal line carries? Could he catch 40 passes? Could he, throw a couple of touchdown passes? All of a sudden, he's like a top 10 fantasy tight end.
Yeah. So
yeah.
All the stuff like people, he's just going to be a tight end, the quarterback. Like, I don't think it's completely over back. Like, I think they're still going to do some of those designed runs for him. I think there's going to be goal line stuff. It would be stupid to get rid of all these things that actually worked with him. I think that Peyton did a little bit too much with him. I think some of those criticisms are fair, but there's a lot of stuff that Taysom did well, getting the ball snapped directly to him that I don't think should go away. And I think that'll remain part of the DNA of this offense. And I actually wouldn't be surprised if they're like too far away from it early because they want to kind of separate from, this kind of like identity. But I think at some point in the season, there's going to be a shift back to having him do some of those things, and it'll be part of the offense. But yeah, I mean, he's in the tight end room. It's the first time in his career that he's practicing, will be practicing as something other than a quarterback. He's never been in those meeting rooms before. He's never prepared for a season as anything other than a quarterback. So I think, some of the stuff we've seen him do as a receiver, as a blocker, like that's just instinct based off of his view of how things looked at quarterback. Like now he's actually kind of like understanding why and how and getting the technique of it. The Liz Frank injury, I think he hasn't practiced yet. So I think there's still some distance to go with that, but I think that there's a chance, I don't know what it's exactly going to look like because we haven't seen him full time in this type of role, but like he does block well. So that means that he's going to get some snaps there. Like that alone is going to get him on the field. I think he blocks better than Jawan Johnson. Troutman's a decent blocker. The receiving stuff, like you said, it has some distance to go. Like I think that position's wide open. Lucas Kroll's another guy they have here, undrafted player that's looked okay. So he's maybe some competition, but if Taysom's good and his athleticism translates like it probably should to that position, like there's a chance that he could be pretty solid at tight end. And I think he's definitely somebody worth keeping an eye on as a potential upside type of player.
Do the people in the Saints, like, are they okay with the Taysom contract? When they gave Taysom that contract, Like,
That's
was
such a loaded question.
everybody was laughing around, everyone was laughing at this contract around Twitter, and I don't know, but you talk to people in the league. Was this just like Sean Payton going rogue? And do they feel any obligation to like actually play Taysom now because he's making so much money? I mean, I believe it was like 21 million guaranteed or something like that in the deal. How do people in the Saints think about Taysom's contract now?
So his contract was kind of based on Austin Hooper's. So like when they signed him to it, they were looking at him as like a, that level, a tight end. And then there's like upside built into it for if he were to ever to be quarterback and become good at quarterback. I think that the feeling is that Sean Payton, that was his guy. Like, I think that without him, maybe things don't look necessarily the same. I don't think that people hate it as much as people outside of the building. I think that there's generally a pretty good opinion of Taysom Hill inside the Saints facility. But yeah, Sean definitely, I think, took care of him on his way out the door. I think that's probably an accurate way to look at it. But yeah, I mean, I don't know that they feel saddled by it. I don't, the other thing with this organization, like, I don't think they feel obligated to do anything based on money, draft position, anything else like that. I think they're kind of set up really unique. That their owner kind of just trusts everything that's going on. I don't feel like anybody in this building really feels like they're on the hot seat or, oh, if we miss this draft pick, like things are going to like, there's a runway to build the team. There's trust. There's a lot of, accrued goodwill throughout the years. So I don't think they feel, any pressure toward that. Like to that extent, like if Trevor Penning isn't ready, like they've already decided like they're 100% comfortable keeping their first round pick on the bench and playing James Hurst. And, they just don't really operate with those same kind of pressures that I think other teams do where the owners kind of, got people on pins and needles a little bit.
Yeah.
That's why they call it the Big Easy.
Yeah. You guys
they win a lot of games though.
You guys outlined kind of the bull case for Taysom. The bear case for me is, I mean, he's coming off of Liz Frank. His biggest fan is gone, and he's trying to play a position he's never played before. And so and in fantasy, like he's like free, so it's not like there's a lot of opportunity cost in like the 18th round or wherever he goes. But to me, like Irv Smith in the 14th round or Taysom in the 18th round, it's like an absolute no brainer. I'd rather have Irv, but yeah, okay. Any other Saints questions? I have one more kind of beat writing question, Evan, but do you have any more Saints questions for Nick?
I think we covered all the big ones.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we see stuff all the time this time of year, Nick, like, Ian Rappaport reporting on J.K. Dobbins injury and all kinds of stuff like that. How does this, if you could give some insight into how kind of injury reporting around the NFL works, because so much right now is people trying to figure out guys who got hurt last year, when are they coming? When's Chris Godwin coming back? When's Michael Gallup coming back? When's J.K. Dobbins coming back? Are agents leaking this to national reporters, or how is this? What's the information flow like on NFL injuries, I guess, before the season and then in season too? Because that's just such a big part of fantasy.
So I think it's everybody, and people kind of give out little nuggets to build currency so that you tell them what you know. And, there's kind of a give and take with that whole process. The thing with injuries this time of year, like I hedged the whole Mike Thomas thing because everything everybody tells you about an injury this time of year is extremely optimistic. Oh, he's going to be fine. He's going to be out there at this time. He's going to be there. In half the time, those things don't come to fruition, and it ends up being, the guy that someone tells you, oh, he's going to be ready day one, and then day one comes and he's on the PUP list, and it's just like, all right, what the hell? So you kind of got to be careful this time of year with how things go on. During the season, I would say that more of the leaks are not team based because the team is more protective of their game plan, and they don't want the opponent to know kind of what's going on, and you're giving up an edge on some of that stuff. So that's more on the periphery. And, sometimes that periphery information is a little bit more accurate on those types of things than the stuff coming directly from the building. So, but yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of everywhere. And, if you kind of watch people and you kind of watch their relationships, you can kind of get an idea of, where things are coming from and things like that. So, as a fantasy player, like I think you kind of, I play fantasy, so like I kind of like study the reporters too, so I know who to trust and not to trust, and you kind of get a feel for maybe where some of that stuff's coming from, and if you can establish there's like a certain type of relationship in certain areas, like some guys have just a certain player on lock, and it's just like, okay, like I can tell he's tied in with this wide receivers camp, and everything he says is solid. So I think those things are as important as anything. And, locally during the season, I think maybe people like us that cover teams maybe sometimes might have a little bit of a better beat on where people are at, like in their rehab and stuff like that.
Nick is a rap sheet guy, by the way.
Yeah,
that's my guy, man. Yeah, Ian's A1 in my book.
Yeah,
I met him at the combine. He was so nice to me. He was like so cool. Introduced me to. He was hanging out with at the bar with Eric Burkhart, who repped Kyler Murray. That was the year that Kyler Murray was going #1, and Rap Sheet was like so nice to me and introduced me to him, and it was cool.
Yeah. My take on the injury stuff this time of year is like, why would a team or an agent be optimistic in the press, right? Because like, let's say you're J.K. Dobbins' agent. Wouldn't you rather your guy be like, well, we don't know if he's gonna be ready for week 1, and then if he's ready for week 1, he looks like a hero. He worked so hard, he's ready. Instead of putting all the pressure on the kid by saying, oh, he's gonna be out there week 1, like why? And then he only looks bad. There's only downside outcomes. He looks bad if he's not ready for week 1. You know what I'm saying?
I think you got to put yourself in the mindset of like all these people and they're ultra competitive and like they don't want to admit that there's any possibility of losing. And I think like even agents are kind of wired that way, and team people are wired that way. Like these are all people that have like absurd belief in everything, and they just kind of have to exist in that place of like optimism where I'm generally pessimistic about some of these things and realistic. And like I just think that just the way they're wired, and you just kind of have to like, if it's that far away, oh, he's going to be good. And then it's like, they're not. So
right.
I've just, like I said, I've learned over the years that like, I got to hedge some of this stuff, and you take it and you say, okay, I'm hearing good things, instead of saying he's going to be ready week 1. Cause then I look like shit if he's not out there week 1. So you kind of gotta be careful with it, and just, okay, things are trending in the right direction. Probably means somebody told somebody, oh, he's going to be good to go. But like that person's smart enough to not come out and say it and put themselves on the line like that.
Right. Makes perfect sense. All right. This was awesome, Nick. We learned a lot. Tell the people where they can find you on social, where they can find your work.
Yeah, I feel like everybody knows because I get hit up by ETR people all day long. But I'm on Twitter at Nick_Underhill, and my website is neworleans.football. If you like the Saints, sign up for the site. I promise that you will like our coverage.
Yes. We need a Nick on every team so that we can have them on speed dial to answer our questions. But that is a long-term goal we have for sure. But yeah, we appreciate Nick letting us badger him with questions all the time. Thanks so much for being here, Nick.
Yeah, appreciate you guys.
For Evan, for producer Luke, for Nick, I'm Adam. Good luck, everybody.